Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football podcast. I'm Joe Devine, and I'm delighted today to be joined by JJ Bull.
Yes.
John McKenzie.
Hello.
And Ruben Pinder.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Good.
Okay. I never like it when people ask how people are at the start of podcasts.
You don't like it?
No, because it's unnecessary small talk, and I really hate doing small talk.
Really?
Ever, in any situation ever, yeah.
This is still unnecessary small talk.
I would say this talk is quite small.
I feel that this is breaking the
meta,
convention of what
isn't
you'd
it?
normally do in a thing.
I think
Therefore, I like it.
now that we live in a sort of post-truth, postmodern world, I think the notion of like breaking the meta or the fourth wall is so ingrained and cliche that actually it's just become part of small talk. In the same way that the hippies thought that they were like beating the system by wearing flowers in their hair, but actually all the brands just designed clothes with flowers on, and now they all buy the flower clothes, and they're back as consumers again. You know,
That's good.
you can never really escape capitalism, can you?
No.
No.
Or
Tottenham. Oh, Spurs. Steve
Tottenham
Hankey's written
Hotspur.
Tottenham.
He's actually written Tottenham, not so Hotspur.
Tottenham, not so
I wonder
Hotspur.
what they'd think of that, because it sort of agrees with their brand awareness, but also not.
It wasn't on their approved brand.
What do you think they would think
requests.
of Tottenham? You know, when they write Totnum, Tottenham.
I don't think they would like that. I
It's
think they'd
weird,
like
isn't it?
that
Because you
even
could
less
br-
than
you could
Steve
brandify
Hankey
that,
likes
couldn't you?
likes what you've said now. He's very upset. Just for listeners, we record the intro at the end of the podcast, so when we know what we've talked about, because we don't know what we're going to say before we sit down.
See, I like this kind of chat. This is good.
Yeah, this is good, right? And Steve Hankey at the end of the podcast, which in our time has happened before now, but in your time will happen at the end of the show that you're listening to. He was irate. He can't wait for us to finish. It's almost as though he's got somewhere better to be, Steve.
Yeah.
No, not true. Absolutely not true. Tottenham, not so Hotspur, and those sweet, sweet cherries. AFC Bournemouth, that's what Steve's written here. We talk about that. We talk about how sweet those cherries are and how bitter Tottenham are. No, I don't know. Why context matters when taking the bins out. We talked about that. Manchester. Yeah, remember we took the bins out?
How
Took the bins out, but
how-
only washed a spoon.
Postacoglu's bins are like impeccable, but the sink is overflowing.
The sink's
with
overflowing.
Moldy cups.
I spilled
I
rubbish
don't remember
everywhere.
that at all.
You don't
What
remember
happened
that?
today?
That was the beginning of today, yeah.
Oh, that feels like a long time ago.
It was quite, I mean, that's kind of been Steve's point the whole way through.
I see.
Yeah. Maybe he's got a point. What else? Manchester City got lost in the Nottingham Forest. Steve, these are terrible.
I
These
feel
are
like I've
terrible,
been transported back to the 1990s or something.
Manchester City got lost in the Nottingham Forest. Let me read it as it was intended. Somehow David and Goliath comes up again. Good Lord. I mean, honestly, it comes up for good reason. JJ needs biblical schooling. We played the separation game. That was fun. That was actually very fun. Another way things are bad at Manchester United. We talked about Manchester United for a little bit. And then we played points are bad at the end of the episode. There's so much happening in this episode and over a relatively long period of time. You know? People said things. Time passed. You know?
I had fun.
You had fun?
I had fun. And I hope the viewers have fun. And if they want more fun,
Yeah.
where should they go on the 24th of May?
The toilet? The toilet? I always have fun on the toilet. What about you, JJ?
Just like getting a boat for like, going out to sea.
Boat?
Pillaging, stealing gold and treasure from other sailors.
The
Always have a bit
Soho
of fun
Theatre
pillaging.
in Walthamstow.
Oh, yes,
Oh, yeah.
Live show. Tickets in the description.
That's right, yeah.
Why do I have to do your job for you?
Pillaging, though, would be good. That's right, Ruben, it's the Soho Theatre, 24. And we didn't just talk about pillaging for 10 minutes, and that wasn't cut. Not a problem. Come and join us. Visit the link below. What's on the docket? I've talked about it already. On with the show. Where else to begin, of course, than Tottenham 2? Oh, wait. Spurs 2. I'm sorry, I forgot. I forgot the rule. Spurs 2 Bournemouth. Now, John, it's been 18 months, roughly, since Ange Postecoglou took over. And you sort of pointed out over the weekend that this was quite an interesting game in the sense that, on the one hand, we would have expected a lot more from Postecoglou's Spurs by now. And on the other, we might have expected Bournemouth to be relegated. And yet, the game was 2-2. Bournemouth arguably could have won it. It's quite a nice sort of line in the sand, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Both coaches were appointed in the same month, June 2023. So they've had exactly the same amount of time at their clubs. Obviously, Iraola inherited a team that basically could have gone down the season before, certainly according to the underlying numbers. And Postecoglou inherited a team that were, I suppose, perennially Champions League aimers. There's lots of context, and Spurs fans.
How much context is there?
We're oozing in context,
Oh.
but I think that when Spurs fans talk about this, there's a group of Spurs fans who are very Postecoglou in, and I think the conversations they have
Postecoglou.
Postecoglou.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the conversations now have become so focused on the minutiae that sometimes the big picture drops out of view. So I tweeted yesterday being like, in the period that these two respective managers have been at their clubs, Bournemouth essentially are putting up about the same amount of points. And certainly if you go from after, you remember at the beginning, Iraola did quite badly. Postecoglou did quite well. If you take the points totals from October 24th, 2023, so 2 months into their respective tenures, Bournemouth have put up 12 points more than Spurs,
Right.
despite having spent gross 200 million less on players.
Well, I can tell you that according to Transfer Market, the current squad value for Bournemouth is 367 million euros. But the current squad value for Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur, is 846 million euros.
Yeah.
So those are two different numbers, John.
They are different numbers.
Yeah.
Again, context comes
Context.
into it, right? That it's true that Spurs have had injury issues. It's true that Spurs lost Harry Kane.
Yeah.
It's true that Spurs have been trying to rebuild their squad, etc.
It's true that Spurs can be a little Spursy sometimes.
Yeah, and these are all context and important context. But I think fans sometimes treat context as though it's sort of like a quantitative thing. So it's like if you've got one pro context and one negative context, you sort of cancel out the context, right?
Well, that's how context works. I might not have washed up, but I did take the rubbish out, and therefore it's a sort of 1 for 1, right?
Right, but I also think that the qualitative aspect of context works as well, and is important.
I spilled the rubbish everywhere as I was taking it out.
Yeah, right, and I cleaned one
up.
spoon,
Yeah.
right? It's and I think that when you actually look at the big picture context of the difference now between where Spurs are at and where Bournemouth are at, it does raise questions that I think mitigates a lot of the arguments that some Spurs fans make about Postecoglou in terms of these injuries and the fact they brought in a lot of young players, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I think that Spurs are now they're operating at a level that is below where is acceptable for them to be, with all of the context that they talk about.
Sure.
And it sort of does raise a question about what the future looks like for Spurs. What's going on behind me?
Nothing. I can just hear I can hear someone breathing and tapping on the keyboard, and I can't work out where I'm.
Hello.
If someone's tapping on the keyboard, breathing heavily, it's probably Monsieur Hanky over there.
Definitely had my mic on for the start of the
Turn
whole
that
podcast.
microphone off, you big respiratory machine. Anyway, you'd said context a lot.
Yeah,
I think the rest of it.
But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Do we think that even with the context of the mitigation that Postecoglou's had, should Spurs be a sort of lower mid-table side?
Well, let's throw JJ in, because JJ, you also watched this game, and you said, let me just quote you. You said, "I think Spurs are quite bad."
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think about what John's saying?
Well, I think...
And feel free to talk about any context that you want to throw in there.
Okay. Well, they should be better because they have spent money on the players, but we all know the problem with Spurs and not having the right players to win the games. I don't know what I'm saying.
What is it? What's the problem with
I don't
Spurs
know.
and
I'm just
not having the right
I'm
players
just
to
trying
win
to
the
work out what I'm trying to say. I'm doing that thing where I talk and
You
then
start-
eventually I get on the path.
Yeah.
So I'll try.
Sometimes you start a sentence and you don't know where you're going to end up.
Keep
Yeah,
going.
Michael Scott. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to buy you some time here.
Yeah.
really.
Thanks.
No,
Okay.
the thing is, it doesn't work if he's not talking.
Right,
He
okay.
has to
No,
be talking.
because
Think
now I don't know what I was
aloud.
talking about. Now it's gone.
Why
You
are
were talking
Spurs
about-
underwhelming?
Oh, there you go.
No, that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I will instead do Spurs. Oh, yes.
Yeah?
I don't really like to do that because sometimes it jogs you.
Yeah. Did it work?
Anyway, Spurs should be
Wait,
better.
stop.
Spurs should be
Stop,
better.
stop.
No, I can do it now.
No, hold on, stop.
I can do it.
Stop, wait, stop. Start again. What do you think?
Spurs should be better than they are.
It's really dying on the vine. What do you think about Spurs?
Bad.
Yeah, they are bad, aren't they, JJ?
But I'm Postacog medium now.
You're Postacog
I was
neutral.
Postacogling for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think So you've had all the injuries. That is going to derail you. But I mean, in the game, the thing I thought was interesting tactically in this game is that, like, having watched a lot of Bournemouth recently, 'cause we did a show last week on the Athletic YouTube thing, and now I'm like feel more au fait with how Bournemouth's pressing works, trying to work out how managers then try to deal with that. And so I thought what Spurs were doing, which was interesting, was having certain players at like certain times, they would drop into a position where it would pull someone out of a position at the time they don't want to go with them. So then they'd have someone to receive the ball, which means someone else could go with it. But they played it really slow in the first half. They don't really offer much. There's nothing really about them. They were getting turned over in midfield. They lacked like the power that Bournemouth had. Bournemouth just looked much better.
Yeah.
Like much more powerful, I think is one word. I mean, I know it's a word,
Yeah.
but I'm using it.
It is a word.
Yeah.
You've employed its use here.
Yes. And so I'm thinking what Postecoglou has done over his time, because now I think his name's Postecoglou, is probably less than I thought it would be by now. And
Yeah.
I've given him time with the injuries.
Because he was great at Celtic, right? Everyone, I know it's
Yeah,
hard
but
to
honestly,
remember, but
like, you'd
everyone
win
was
the league.
really excited.
You'd win the league with Celtic. Like you would.
Is that a compliment?
As long as you gave your halftime team talks in that American accent.
I could do that.
Yeah,
They
that
would
would-
like
that would
it.
work.
I
But-
could do a Scottish accent. I won't do it here. That seems very dangerous.
And I'm sort of taking away from some of the stuff. I mean, they played really good football. It took a
Yeah.
while. People weren't convinced about Postecoglou at Celtic either for ages.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they loved him because he's
How
good.
long was it?
I think it was a few months. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a couple of months. They were a bit slow at the beginning, but it was like
Yeah.
6 months where they were slow, and then they.
It wasn't
never looked
18
back.
months.
Basically, if you lose even a single game at Celtic, you're like, well, you must be an idiot because how
Yeah.
have you done that?
Right.
And so that sort of feeds into it. Even a draw with like, I don't know, Cali Thistle. I was like, what? This guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's weirdly different though to Spurs, right? Because they had like sort of 10 wins in a row or something,
Yeah.
and then dropped off. And actually, if you look at their record from that point onwards, it's pretty middling. So it's weird that it was slow starting.
It was that Chelsea game, wasn't it, where they went down to 9 men. That was the end of that great run, and then they just started to fall apart. But something that I noticed in the Bournemouth game that I think you pointed out, John, in a video at the start of the season, was how far apart they are in build-up. Like every pass that they make as they're trying to break through Bournemouth's pressing lines is so long in distance that like the cumulative risk of losing the ball in build-up surely is huge when you try to do that.
And no one moves to receive the ball either.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I noticed yesterday.
Probably
is
because
that
they're all knackered.
well, there's a
right?
couple of times when the central midfielders will receive it, or whoever's in the central midfield position will receive it, and there's no one that's got an easy pass on, so you've got to suddenly turn back,
And, they
and
end
then
up,
you
like,
get closed down and you lose it.
sprint into like their own defensive corners just to get away from the pack that are chasing them, desperately looking for somebody to pass to.
Yeah, 'cause
and
it's-
nobody's
yeah.
there.
Yeah. If they're close together, it might be a bit easier for them to find passes. But like they do have really good players. Like in the future, they will be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still things that like I think the Bournemouth score from it when Pedro Porro went forward and he misplaced a pass out wide.
Yeah,
that
but
was.
it was disallowed though.
But even that, so like the same problem. We know they go forward, and you know they leave the fullback positions vacant, and so teams like Kirkhouse can just run fully, like steam up the wing into that position, because there's the space there. So then you probably need to like come up with a way to not allow that to happen because it's so obvious. But the way that he wants these players to bomb forward and leave the space vacant because then they should be able to control the pitch higher up the pitch, but they just can't do it still. And is that players or is that other teams figuring them out?
Yeah.
Because I think the
Well, when
problem
they
is
play against Bournemouth, though, sorry to interrupt,
Oh,
but
that's
like the question of whether it's players still or whether it's coaching or whatever, like this is the reason I think this is a great game to have this conversation is because Bournemouth don't have the players that you would assume would be able to do what they can do, but they're coached extremely well, and then they can do it.
I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like Ryan Christie's like decent, but he's really, really important in that Bournemouth team. But you look through the team, like the Bournemouth team there. Like, so Kepa is obviously was at some point a top level keeper. I don't know if the goalkeepers to tell you he's good or not. Lewis Cook I really like. I don't know who Hill is.
Cook's playing out of position as well.
Right back, yeah, it's true. Dean Huijsen is clearly going to be.
James Hill is like injury cover, and
Okay.
Zabani's obviously banned at the moment. Because of that red
Zabarni,
card,
that's the one missing, yeah. So he's like obviously like a Champions League level player. Huijsen is obviously, I think, already a Champions League level player. He's amazing. Tyler Adams is an international level player. Justin Kluivert is playing really well. I saw him play Ajax a while ago. Is good. Semenyo and Tavernier are Semenyo is I would say the more outstanding of the two players, but Tavernier does all the work you want on that right hand side. Is decent. Evan Nielsen is a really good player as well.
He's the guy they bought from Porto. Yeah.
Yeah,
to
for like
replace
40
Solanke.
million or something.
Kluivert's
like
an interesting one because he's bounced around at lots of different clubs and didn't really settle, never really played this consistently well. But in the right environment with the right coach, has exploded into form.
At the right time, I
There's
think.
so
as well.
many of those players you can say Iraola made those players. Like they weren't considered to be at the level they were at until he did it. And that's always the difficulty of assessing like how good a team's squad are, right? Because I think like people will say of the Spurs players, well, they're not as good as they should be because they're not playing as well as they should be right now. But you then get the flip side thing where people will say, oh, well, yeah, but Bournemouth have got loads of really good players, haven't they? Now, all they're saying there is that this team's winning more than the other team. And obviously, like, having better players makes it easier to win. But also, the whole idea of a coach and a manager employing tactics and working with the players over a period of time should be that you raise the level of those players as well. And I think as a result, you end up with a lot of these arguments just sort of falling down on whether or not someone wants to say, well, this team's winning all the time, so the players are good and the manager's good, blah, blah, blah.
It's like the environment as well. So, I mean, if you took the Spurs players in the front line, so if you put Odegaard into that Bournemouth team, he's a great player.
Take Solanke and put him in that Bournemouth team and he'll have quite a good season.
Well, this is the thing, right? So if you had Solanke, obviously Solanke was what Evan Nielsen's doing now, but if you put Brennan Johnson and Odegaard into that team, they probably would get in the team, and I think they would do better at Bournemouth than they would at Spurs. But is that because of the coaching, the expectations, or just like the general environment of it? Because I think
vibe.
You are expected to do more at Spurs, aren't you? You've got a big, fancy, like super galactic stadium. So it's almost like you have to do more and be this thing that they're not quite there yet. Whereas Bournemouth, you can approach games in a different way. It's almost like the aura of the team is different because it's little old Bournemouth. So
yeah, the mood of being David rather than Goliath helps.
Yeah,
Like
and Spurs are like halfway between. They're like a man turning into a dragon.
Yeah, well, Spurs.
You seem to think that Goliath is a dragon. Goliath was a man. He was a really tall man.
He said he's so upset about this. He said this to me the other day when you weren't there. He was like, JJ thinks Goliath's a dragon. I was like, I'm sure he does.
He's not.
I think you mean Leviathan. Is that what you're getting confused with?
Who do you think Goliath? Who do you think Goliath is?
Like a big monster.
Really?
It's a giant,
Really?
isn't he?
Yeah.
It's just
But
a big
he's
man.
the one that in the Bible David kills Goliath with the slingshot.
No, I'm really
We
bad
did
on
it.
that.
That's who
Did
Goliath
we do this
is.
chat last week?
Yes.
We did.
Yeah.
but
You
I-
need to listen to the episodes you're not
Basically, imagine a man. Now make him twice
do
as
that.
big.
That's me.
That's Goliath.
Yeah,
It's
just
is Joe.
me, yeah.
This is Joe.
And if you were tiny and you killed me with a slingshot, and then you became the king of Israel, that would be. Is that right? I think that's right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
Spurs
what
are the shortest giant is the problem, is that they want, the expectations are like, it's this horrible combination of kind of wanting to punch above your weight and challenge the big guys, but then if you lose or don't beat Bournemouth, it's a disaster.
I
Right?
feel like if Joe was twice as tall and I flung a rock off his head, you wouldn't like go down.
It depends how accurately the rock hit me in the head. I think these things can happen.
I
Well,
think
there's
you're
only one way to find
I think you're undervaluing the force of a small object thrown at speed, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's
What is it?
Never mind,
Momentum
I
is
can't-
half
that's
mv. Momentum is half mv squared or something like that. So velocity is like squared.
yeah.
So the speed is way more impactful than. No, it's mass. It's mass.
That's right, John.
It's half mass times velocity squared.
Half mass.
So mass is not that important because as long as it's going quickly,
and that's
it's going
what
to make the force much bigger.
That's what my doctor always says to me. He says, "Don't worry about your mass. He says, keep going, get to critical mass." And then don't come here, just go straight to the hospital.
Critical mass presumably being morbidly obese, is it?
That's right, yeah. Now listen, on Spurs specifically, I don't always have to draw it around to a hey, let's fire somebody conversation. But with Ange Postecoglou, it has been.
I knew my
18
time was
months.
oh no, let's go.
It's been 18 months. We would have expected to see a lot better results, I think, by now. I feel some sympathy, John, for the Spurs fans that you were talking about earlier, who are looking for reasons or citing context as to why that they still think he should be in. Because I look around the manager market, and obviously Antonio Iraola is standing right in front of us, but there's not that many people that I think would be very suited to the job. There's not that many people that are available. Ange Postecoglou has clearly made it work previously, and also we've said this before, but off the back of two kind of difficult to like managers, it's nice to have someone around that you actually support. You can kind of see the same thing happening with Ruben Amorim at Manchester United at the moment. Things are going very badly, but the fans seem to still, like him. So if you think the Spurs reached towards the end of the season. Obviously, they're still in the Europa League. They are, right? They're still in the Europa League.
1-0 down against RZ.
Their season could be over this week, next week. It's sort of over in every other sense. So there's a couple of months to think about it. Good Lord, that is a creaky chair. Is that your chair?
It was my chair.
Should we swap out Ruben's chair? Because that's insanely creaky. Thanks, Steve.
Sorry.
Spurs' season could be over relatively soon. They are still in the Europa League, halfway through a tricky tie. But there's a couple of months left before the end of the season to consider what the next options could be. I really don't know what I would do if I was in charge of making this decision. I'm not sure that there is a right answer. I think on the one hand, it's obvious that it hasn't worked yet and it's not going well. And on the other hand, to be fair to those Spurs fans that would talk about context, there's loads of context. Mm-hmm. And it's also happening at other teams as well. So if you were in charge, let's put you in the shoes of Daniel Levy, and I'm sure they'd be lovely shoes. What would you do if you were in those shoes?
I think it's worth pointing out that I'm not Ange out necessarily.
Sure.
My frustration has always been that there's a group of people out there who seem to think that the only thing that's happened here is there's been loads of injuries, and once all of those injuries go, suddenly Spurs are going to reach the sunny uplands of footballing success again.
Right.
I'm just less convinced of that. That's not to say that I don't think that things could improve if he changed aspects of his game model. Mm-hmm. And that's the frustration for me, is that he seems very against that kind of thing, right? He's always sort of presented himself as the ultimate idealist and someone who is not for turning, right? He'll constantly say, like, if I don't believe in my ideas, why will my players believe in my ideas?
Yeah.
Which, it's a rhetorical device. I think at times he does change things.
Yeah.
He just wants it to feel as though that's happening within a more coherent sort of big idea about the game.
Yeah.
If I believed as an owner that he was going to make those changes and was able to make those changes, I would keep him in. But I do think that there's a lot of heavy lifting being done with this idea that all you need to do is get your fit players back, and then suddenly Spurs are going to be great again. Because I just don't think we've just not seen that, apart from like right at the beginning of his tenure, that with those 10 wins or whatever it was, and how much of that just comes down to outlier advantage, because teams just don't really know what to expect. Feels like a lot of the issues now are based around the fact that teams know how to counter what Spurs are doing. Things have become less effective, so their build-ups become less effective, their pressings become less effective. And I don't just think it's because of the physical incapacity that they've had. That's the position that I would have. If I was the owner, I would go and have a talk with them and say, seems like your ideas aren't working. Can you persuade me that you're going to be able to make changes this summer?
I feel like that would be a scary conversation to have with Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, I think it would be. But
walk into his office and say, "It seems like your ideas aren't working. What have you got to say about that?"
Yeah, but I think the owner should be able to have that kind of frank conversation with, or the director of football or whatever should be able to have that kind of frank conversation with him, because if it happens again that next season the same thing takes place, right, where Spurs look okay at the beginning of the season, they then get an injury crisis around December, etc. It's starting to look very much like there's a pattern emerging. And do you want to go through another tranche of summer transfers where you're bringing in players for a coach and then eventually getting rid of him by December? Probably not. So I think I'm Ange bivalent.
That's good.
Ange Gnostic at the moment.
That's nice.
But yeah, these are the things that's what my frustration is with. It's like, as things stand, I don't think things are going to work.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say I don't think that anything will work with him.
Yeah.
But I want to see proof that there's going to be changes.
It's also worth saying that for Spurs fans listening who might be Ange in, Postecoglou, that I know the particular Spurs fan that you're imagining in your head when you talk about this, and he is. So I'm completely on board with you. JJ, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I think part of the problems is like all these Premier League teams, they want to obviously be winning games, and you want to have a manager in that can do that. And almost all the managers that are there are capable of turning a team into something that can win. And Postecoglou's done it before. Everywhere he's been, he's ended up winning something. But once you
everywhere you go,
Postecoglou wins for you.
Yeah.
And the problem you have is that if you don't get like the momentum, if you lose it, it's very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
So you can get derailed. And he had it at the start, but then it goes away. It's not that people stop believing in you. It's just that unless you can carry it forward, you can't supercharge what you're doing. It's almost a little bit like, you play any of those like multiplayer games, like Warzone's the most obvious one, where you start a game, you fly in, you fly down, you're the manager flying into the new club,
Yes.
you land at the place you want to land
on
at.
the wingsuit.
Yeah, so ideally you want to land at the same bit you go to the bit which
the
is
goal.
pre-season.
Oh.
So you want to land at pre-season so you can put all your ideas in and you can go. And if you start off, you might get a few kills at the very start and your game's good and you feel good, then you can ride it out and you can go. And things will happen along the way, but if you've started well and the place you can go forward and like that. But if you go forward and then your teammates still do something stupid and they all end up dying, so it's just you carrying them, you can't play on the way you want to. You have to suddenly go and hide in the boat and wait for them to come back.
Right.
Then you lose momentum and your other opponents get like the better weapons and then they can hold on to you and hold you from different positions.
Yeah.
So you can never really get back and your game's ruined. So you just roll the dice, get a new manager in, they fly in and do something else. And eventually you get to the point where you have a good game and you win. And then someone else buys that manager off of you. And I think that's not a bad analogy.
It's not a bad. And can we have a quick round of applause for JJ for once using an analogy that didn't include Aberdeen or Football Manager? Congratulations.
Or five-a-side.
He's expanded his repertoire. Five-a-side. That's true. That's true.
I'm going to start reading books.
What do you call it in those
then you'll see.
Royal Rumble games where someone just
Battle Royale.
Yeah, Battle Royale, where you like hide out and then
Camping.
I like that.
Camping.
My flatmate plays Fortnite and he always complains about people camping.
Oh, they're just camping. They're just
Does he call them noobs?
Noobs, yeah,
noobs.
definitely.
I love noobs.
I think they need to address why so many players get injured, because blaming the fixture schedule is like valid, but also maybe a bit of a cop out. Like, I'm not a doctor, and I don't watch them train, but there's got to be something in the idea that if you have Europa League football, maybe you can't train as intensely as you want to play, and you have to balance those things out a bit to try and mitigate the number of muscle injuries that you get. Maybe.
It's also worth saying, I think a lot of people say, well, they don't have as much time to train when they're, and that's true, but the way that they play also impacts and they play intensely. And I think that, again, not a doctor, but it does seem as though there's a correlation between the way that they...
Well, I am a doctor.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
Just luck.
Yeah.
Paracetamol, mate, should do the trick.
But I do also think it's kind of easy to shift when you're so focused on the minutiae. You can shift the goalposts all you want, right? Because you can say, well, Bournemouth they don't play as many games as us, so it's fine for them to be good. But then you're like, well, the other teams who are not doing as like Man City are in the same situation as Spurs. They've had a massive drop off, and they're still challenging for the top four. And you can argue about then you can move the goalposts and say, well, the level of player that
moving
they have,
the goalpost might actually help.
That's
Spurs
true.
score more goals.
If you move them outwards.
Yeah,
but I do
only
think that it becomes
and
so
don't
easy
switch
to
half-time.
it then becomes so easy to ignore any sort of evidence and just brush it away that I think that's why this weekend I was like, you're looking at the big picture. It looks as though Spurs have become a worse team than Bournemouth, which I think is a problem.
I thought Bournemouth looked so much better than in that game, and it's weird that Spurs were able to get the draw. And it's almost, I need to watch it back, but I felt like around about 70 minutes, Spurs just started pinging the ball forward, and that's when they started to get back into it. When they try and play the way they want to, it doesn't really work. But if
They scored a bit of a lucky goal, which sort of gave them a bit of
the Papsar one,
yeah.
He's a really good player.
Yeah,
as well,
that was a
Papsar.
cross. It was a bit Ronaldinho versus David Seaman, but definitely.
Every
accidental.
comment is now going to be like, that's not a cross.
It
I
was
thought
a-
that was
definitely
it was a
meant
cross.
to.
I thought it was on purpose.
Nah.
No?
No. He's tried to cross that back. Either way, it doesn't matter. But you see how Son took the penalty. Imagine if Kepa had just stayed standing and picked up the dribbling ball.
But
imagine how toxic
isn't
it would have
That's
got.
the point,
after that.
isn't it? That's the point of a
Penalty.
Panenka. It's like you make them think you're going one way or the other, and then it goes down the middle.
But it's like
We didn't talk about
in
that.
such a crucial moment, it felt a bit risky.
Oh yeah. But then, I mean, Kepa had let in a long distance shot,
Yeah, that's true.
and then given away a penalty that was just a non-threatening
Yeah,
scenario.
I think he
entirely.
did. He did. I don't know if I've made this point recently on the pod, but more keepers need to pull out of those challenges and let the player who is definitely going down regardless just go down with no contact, because you rush out to force them away from goal. But then he did seem to try and pull his arms away, but maybe like the momentum of gliding on the wet turf means that he commits the foul anyway. But that was quite stupid.
I think as well, Kepa had so little to do in the game that he misses the one chance he had to make a save, and then immediately then just goes really gung ho on the coming out and being like, right, I've got to do something here to make up for that as well.
Do you want to hear a few out of work managers before we move on?
Yeah, very briefly.
Gareth Southgate. No. Jurgi Löw, Eric Ten Hag, Xavi, Walter Mazzari, Max Allegri,
It would be so funny
Eden
if Eric Ten
Terzic.
Hag went to Tottenham.
Nuri Sahin, Julian Lopetegui,
I would like that a lot.
Gary O'Neill, Roger Schmidt, Sam Allardyce, Dunga, Sean Dyche, Javi Gracia, Russell Martin, Steve Cooper.
He's on Monday Night Football tonight, so he's too busy for.
Steve
That's
Coogan.
in the past, John.
He's on
Cooper.
Monday Night Football yesterday.
He was. I thought he spoke very well on Monday Night Football in his audition for the Spurs job.
All right, let's go to a break, and when we come back, we'll talk. Nottingham Forest won. Nil Manchester City. Now, this is funny, isn't it? And any other time you would have thought this is unexpected. But weirdly, this feels kind of appropriate, JJ, doesn't it? It sort of seems like that's the kind of result that would happen between the two teams in the top four, and this is all
Weirdly, yes.
normal. Yeah,
Because it's like two teams who are the absolute opposites of each other. One sits back and wants to hit you on the counter. One wants to sit you back and then not let you counter, so they can score eventually by like squeezing you to death. And then, of course, that's what happens. They get up the other end, and then Hudson-Odoi slips one in at the near post, which Ederson, I don't know if he should save it or not. He hit it very hard. I think it's very hard to be a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
People will underestimate how fast the ball flies at you.
Yeah.
You got to mostly guess, I think.
I think so, yeah. Based on all the times people have shot at you before and how the body looks when it's about to hit the ball.
You're basically anticipating everything the whole time.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's for goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Not for us.
Not us.
And, so that 1-0 exactly made perfect sense. And like Man City even, I think the changes that Guardiola made, or specifically putting Foden in to take out Marmoush, who's been really fun to watch and is more like darty and goes in behind and makes all the runs but doesn't control the ball the way he wants, to make sure you can't be done in like Forest are going to do to you.
Like they were in this game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they put Foden in to try and control it. And I can't remember how the goal comes about, so what I'm going to do is watch that goal while someone else says something cool.
It was an interesting way the goal came about, really, because I think Ola Aina mopped up a City attempted counter-attack, right? And then everybody kind of settles down and is like taking a breather. And like Aina's on the wrong side of the pitch, everyone's kind of getting back into shape. And then Gibbs White gets the ball and immediately speeds it back up and like pings it cross field to Hudson-Odoi, who then is sprinting at the City defence again, who must be thinking like, I thought we were getting a minute of not having to sprint backwards, but here we go again.
Where's my respite?
Yeah, and then Super Callum Hudson-Odoi, with the help of a little deflection, scored through Ederson's near post. I find the season, or just Hudson-Odoi's success at Forest generally, amazing that nobody else took him. You know, like I know he wasn't really succeeding at Chelsea, but £3 million is now looking like a very good piece of business.
Yeah, good for him, and good for Forest as well. I think on the Marmoush thing, this is something that we've seen Guardiola do before, isn't it? Like buy a new player, an exciting new player,
ruin him,
and then ruin him, but like, and then sort of break them in a little bit into the Guardiola style until they're playing like every other Manchester City player, which is to say, extremely effectively, safely enough, but with still devastating.
Yeah, they'll win
goals.
stuff, but at what cost?
At what cost?
Yeah. That's kind of it.
There we go.
Whereas players like Hudson-Odoi, when they go somewhere like Forest,
he won't win things, but not at a cost.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
At what on cost?
The cost was minimal, and now he gets to have actual fun and play football the way he wants to. And
Yeah, in Nottingham, a great place.
That's right.
And he's serenaded with the best football chant in the league.
What is it?
To the tune of American Boy.
Please sing it.
Take me on a trip I'd like to go
No.
someday.
Excuse me.
Copenhagen, Leverkusen and Marseille. I really want to spend Thursdays with you.
He's pitched it too low.
Super Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Yeah. He could get down there.
But they should
I've heard
change.
it.
They should change Thursdays in that chant to Wednesdays now, shouldn't
Yeah,
they?
that's true because it's going to be Wednesdays. Let me take you on a Wednesday. We'll go to Madrid. That's going to be fun next year, isn't
Are you
it?
trying to do like a Craig David?
Yeah. I am.
We
Craig
were in
David.
Madrid by Wednesday.
That's right. Yeah. And then we're out of the Champions League by Thursday because it was in Madrid on Wednesday.
But then getting his name into the chant would be difficult.
That would be
Either way,
tricky.
yeah. Good for him.
We'll workshop it. Well, congratulations to Nottingham Forest. Well done, everyone involved. You know, they've had a great season, and it's seeming more and more likely that they could actually finish inside of the top four. Good Lord, I thought that was that was
Does
just a
inside
joke
the top
earlier in
four
season.
mean 2 or 3? Or 4.
Yeah, I think it
guess
means
it's
2 or
5.
3. It doesn't mean
Or
4.
because 5 is going to be Champions League, isn't it?
5's going to be Champions League, yeah, but I don't. Even though 5's Champions League, I'm going to be
Fake
throwing
Champions
shade on it at the end of the
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, come on, but like not in another season. You're only there because Chelsea
You're only
cleaned
there on a
up in the
technicality.
exactly. Yeah, you're there because of a co-efficient. Nobody wants to be co-efficient Europa, you know.
Yeah.
So if you can get a top 4, that's still where the real players finish their league seasons. And Ruben, I want to play the separation game, please. Have you prepared something so I can join in?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So last week was too easy. Thank you to all the viewers and listeners that pointed out you could do it in one. Silly me. I've made it much harder this week.
Excellent. Who have we got?
I would like you to get from Erling Haaland and
He's
go back.
treating this like countdown. He's like, you're going to type it out.
It's because I won last time I was here.
No, it's fine. I'm happy for you to win
Shall I
again.
hum the
but-
countdown theme tune?
Haaland and who?
Erling Haaland, go back in time and find Paul Konchesky.
Oh my God. Okay.
It can
So
be done.
Can you explain to the listeners who are joining
Yeah.
us for the first time?
So
what
while
the
you're
game is,
doing a
what
bit of
we
research,
learn?
so you have to get from one player to another player via teammates through time. They can be teammates at the same club. The same club can come up more than once if you want. I know John pointed out some people suggested that you couldn't do that in this game. Well, guess what? It's our game and we make the rules, and you can. Another rule is that international teams don't count. So clubs only, Erling Haaland to Paul Konchesky in the shortest route possible, please. I'm now going to put on a 2-minute timer.
Tell us when it started, Ruben.
I shall.
I can't start thinking until the timer starts.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Okay.
On the clock.
Go.
Away you go.
Okay.
Erling Haaland to Paul Konchesky.
All right, that's now 3
Okay,
minutes.
I can't do it.
Okay,
I can't
3
do it.
minutes. Let's say we're back in the
Joe's
room
given
now.
up.
I can tell you where I got to.
Yeah, please do.
Well, I started with Paul Konchesky.
Yeah.
And I thought, I tell you what, QPR 2015-16, his loan there would be probably quite a good place to start. I was thinking Junior Hoylett, but then Rob Green was there. So I went through Rob Green, and I was just trying to find a connection from the 2018-19 Chelsea team, and my mind exploded, and everything stopped
That's
working.
not a bad idea.
That was the route I tried to
That
go.
was
Then,
the
like,
Sarri season, right?
that was the Sarri season, but also I just forgot how recently Haaland's joined City,
Yeah.
and there's not many inter-Premier League connectors, and I just couldn't think of one.
Kovacic.
I know, but Kovacic wasn't at Chelsea. That's
Yeah,
why
he
I was
was.
trying to. He wasn't at Chelsea in 2018-19.
Under Sarri, yeah, he was.
No, he wasn't.
He was, yeah.
No, he wasn't.
He was.
Well, that's what I was trying to find, but he's not in the squad. I just looked.
He definitely started.
Oh, he's there. That's my route. I've already found it. That's why I was going for him. I was looking for him, but he wasn't there. But it's just because I missed him on here. Okay, so there you go. There's my route.
Okay,
It
go on.
was Paul Konchesky at QPR through Rob Green to Chelsea with Kovacic, who played with him at Man City.
That's three teammates between them. Very good.
I found it.
JJ, do we have an answer from you?
Did you on first? Because I might have one. I'm going to quickly just double check if this
Okay,
works.
John.
So I did. Paul Konchesky played with Luis Suarez at Liverpool.
He did.
Luis Suarez played with Neto, the current Bournemouth goalkeeper, who is on loan at Arsenal.
Where-
They played
Oh,
at
at
Barcelona. And Neto plays with Gabriel Jesus, who played with Erling Haaland.
Did Jesus play with Haaland?
Yes.
I don't think he did.
No, he
I
didn't.
think he left the season before Haaland
They
arrived.
did not overlap.
That's
Well,
why
I
no
could
one else
definitely
took
get
that
from
route.
Arsenal. What
How?
about Zinchenko?
Zinchenko and
Same
Jesus
summer.
left the same summer, mate.
There must be another. There must be another way.
You've been my
Ron!
American
No,
girl.
Ron!
Oh my God! So mine is currently
No,
winning.
wait, are you
Gabrielle. Not Alexander.
I'm pretty certain that that's the case. I think they sold them before Haaland arrived. You can check
It's
it
the
out.
same summer. It was summer of 2022.
2022.
It was, yeah.
July 2022.
All right, JJ, do you have an answer? Because if not,
Oh, I can.
I'm an
probably
inglorious
still
winner.
do.
No, but I'm trying to work it.
Where did you get to? Let's
Well,
hear
I
your workings.
worked it two different ways. Holland played with Emery Chan at Borussia Dortmund, and Chan played with Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
So Steven Gerrard played at LA Galaxy. So you have to be different clubs each one, right? So at Galaxy, did he play with...
Do you know what you've just done?
What?
You've had the answer in your hand and thrown it on the floor.
Why?
Steven Gerrard played with Paul Konchesky at Liverpool.
At Liverpool.
They're not there at the same time. I can't find that.
Well, Gerrard was
Oh
there
no,
forever.
no, oh that's fine. Oh, so that's what I was going to do, but then I thought it'd be different clubs. But then obviously,
No. I clarified.
Chelsea's at
You
Liverpool
can-
with Gerrard, and then I did that. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
So we draw.
I got that ages ago. I was trying to find a different club that linked
So
the
you
two.
went Emre Can, Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my fastest route that I had written down was the same, but Scott Carson at City, who played with Gerrard at Liverpool.
Oh, nice.
So
But
what,
then- but
what
then
you're
you're
really
going-
saying
but then I'm
is
going-
that I found a different route that was as fast as yours.
That's good.
So I'm the real winner.
So you're the real
Do you want to
winner,
know the route I came up with yesterday when I was writing this? Haaland played with Hummels at Dortmund, who played with Ian Robben at Bayern, who played with Scott Parker at Chelsea,
Oh, that's
who
nice.
played with Konchesky at Charlton.
That's really
See,
nice.
that's why I thought this was fun. There's
No,
always,
it is
yeah.
fun. It is fun. I think
But-
I said this the other
I
day,
enjoyed
but
that.
like I do this on my movie podcast with movies and actors, and helpfully there's a website called The Oracle of Bacon where you can actually find like the shortest route between actors and films. So we get to check
That
check
is
it in.
handy.
But to be honest, it's more fun to just come up with a creative
Yeah.
route through.
I would like to point out that I can go from Gabriel Jesus to Haaland just.
I'm
through
so
another
sorry,
City-
John. We're
That's
about to
another one.
We're about to go to
right?
another break
What?
though.
Well,
So
Gabriel Jesus played with all of the City players who now play with Erling Haaland.
Yeah,
right?
of
So-
course.
yeah, but that's still not very good, is it?
I'm
I
glad
think
I
it's-
chose.
I think it was
I'm
nice.
glad I chose Konchesky though, because I was looking at other Charlton players. I was gonna pick Jason Newell.
I think we should
That
do.
would have been
we should
hard.
add a via at some point. That would be fun.
That's what we do. So on the film
does that
podcast,
work?
the Via has to be a film that we've covered on the
Right,
show
okay, yeah.
before, and that's where it makes it. That's where you end up being like much more.
But we should get
creative.
like a random person to just say a name, and then they have to go.
We should
have
let
to
the
go via
audience
them.
enjoy the game as it is.
No,
for the
I
time
don't think so.
being.
We need to
No,
immediately.
the
develop
thing
it.
is, you've lost 3 weeks in a row now.
I don't
and
think I've lost. I think I added to the enjoyment of the game, and it's not just about
Well, in
winning.
the same way that
In the same way that
You
Arsenal never
all-
win anything but add to people's
you all
enjoyment.
basically had it without realizing that you had the correct answer.
That's right.
So you had it without realizing that you couldn't.
It's
see
because I couldn't
Kovacic.
find Kovacic.
JJ with the club rule and you with the extra city connection. You all did do it, but
We
just
all
not
did it.
quite.
Yeah.
I did
not
use
with.
Neto.
There was no aplomb.
Do you know what you can tell about this game, Steve Hankey? Is that everyone, to be fair, with the exception of JJ, has lost their ability to podcast because we're all
Yeah.
talking over each other. But that's because of how competitive we are in the game. It's because we actually like the game. And just to say one more time, immediately before the break, I did beat you, John. You got yours wrong, and I'll speak to you after the break. Oh, wasn't that fun? There we go. Okay, next up, Manchester United 1, Arsenal 1. Very, very boring first half of that game. Rather exciting second half of that game. I thought both teams deserved a draw. Anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about, because Rory Smith of The Athletic published a very fun article last week, which prompts a little discussion, we think, on the different ways United's player management has, well, been effective or not effective, and how their squad building's not been brilliant. So we were talking about this a little bit before when we talked about Tottenham, the notion that it's difficult sometimes to find the
Spurs.
divide between Spurs. I'm so sorry. I genuinely can't do that. We talked about this a little earlier when we talked about Spurs, the notion that it's a bit difficult to find the division between, is this like good or bad coaching? Can the players do it, or maybe the players can't do it? This is a fun conversation as it relates to Manchester United, because it's bad in both areas. It really seems to be their recruitment, which is often cited as a negative thing. I think Gary Neville kind of started his analysis of them before the game yesterday by saying they've had terrible recruitment over the past few years. I think that's true. It's also true, though, that there are now a number of terribly recruited Manchester United players that have left the club and gone on to play relatively well at the teams that they've left to play for. And so Rory Smith wrote a fun article about this, hypothesizing whether the rejected Manchester United 11 players that have since left would actually come back and beat the existing Manchester United 11. His idea is that they definitely would do that. Who knows? It's a fun thing to imagine. But it is kind of weird, JJ, isn't it? That, like, obviously there are some examples where you think it hasn't quite worked. So Anthony Martial, for example, is a player that left and maybe hasn't like gone on to win a Ballon d'Or or anything. And there are players that have left to go to leagues that are slightly easier to play in, let's say, than the Premier League. But there are enough examples of Man United players that have left and gone on to be quite good that make you wonder what the hell's going on in Manchester that's causing them to pause their goodness while they're there.
Well, I think it must be to do with the environment and what's actually at Man United. If people go there, because like one of the things that we talk about coaching and how important the coaching is, like I've spoken to managers in the past and asked what you've done to make this player so good all of a sudden. Like I once asked Sean Dyche, how did you make Ashley Barnes a goal machine?
Right.
And he's just like, oh, no, I won't do it. But he was just like, it's down to the player, like they do it. So they have they put the same sessions on, they give them the same individual training they want. If that player suddenly decides that they're about it this year and they just go into it, that's how they get better. There are like infinite number of players who are incredibly talented who come through and you see them listed as wonder kids and then they don't amount to anything, so they don't have the same desire or determination, and most of them have access to like top level coaching and also what do you call it, equipment.
Yeah.
I don't know what you need,
Weights and stuff.
yeah, top quality
Lunch.
weights, yeah, all those sorts of things. So if you have the elite level environment and you have
elite level lunch.
Yeah, which
and
would
weights.
be
Only for the players.
Yeah, only for the players, mind. Not for the staff anymore.
well, so that's one of the things. And then if you take them out of there and you put them into a smaller club with less expectation, suddenly it's a lot easier. So if you're going onto Man United's pitch and you're expected to be as good as like Ryan Giggs, Cristiano Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, it's quite hard to do that if you're not as good as them yet. And so you need people around you to be much better than you to get to that level and see what that is. But they've not had players at that level for a long time. The only one who's like arguably elite is Bruno Fernandes, and I don't even know if he makes them better half the time. So I think when you go into a team like United, like I say, the expectation is huge, but there's clearly something that's been there for a long time, which is what other managers have managed to battle against.
Yeah.
So the only way they ever get success is when they do what Solskjaer did or what Rangnick ended up doing, where you just try and make them play in transition, where you can then utilise the players that you've got. But the recruitment has never really taken them forward and has been bad since Sir Alex Ferguson left, when David Gill left as well.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. When you're not bringing in the top level players, mostly, I mean, what they were really doing was buying the best players from their rivals, and now they don't do that at all. They bought like Paul Pogba.
Yeah, I think that's fair truck, to be honest, because I recall the final years of Ferguson. The biggest transfer window they had before they bought Robin van Persie, which was that final summer that Ferguson was actually working there. The year before that was the biggest spend in ages, because as we remember, the Glazers had come in 2005, and then the club had basically stopped really spending money. There were summers that went by, a bit like Spurs recently, where they just didn't buy anyone. Then they had a summer where they bought David De Gea.
In 2011.
It's 2011.
Yeah.
David De Gea. They bought
Ashley Young.
Was Phil Jones also that year?
Yeah.
That was it, and everyone was like, "Oh wow, this is great," because they've signed players. I think the recruitment's been bad for a long time. I think you could say, okay, they bought Cristiano Ronaldo, who was a player that also Arsenal and everyone was trying to sign.
Ronaldo was pre-Glazer.
Yeah, but then I thought those sorts of signings, and you look back at them, they don't look fantastic, whatever, but they're like absolute top professionals. Like they have the right character.
Oh, sure.
Like Ashley Young is a total battler. Like he still gets into little scraps for no real reason.
I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying that those players would be considered sort of amongst the history of Manchester United, they would be considered maybe De Gea a little differently because he's a goalkeeper, but average to good stalwarts of the club.
Well, they were the best players at other teams in the league. Like Ashley Young was one of those. There was one I've just forgotten who it was that they signed. That's awful. There's other players they've signed basically who are the best or one of the best in competing teams that made them better. It was Antonio Valencia. He was at Wigan, I think.
Yeah,
right?
he was. Even like Louis Sahar a bit before that.
Maybe. I think
Andy Cole's
maybe.
further back. Andy Cole when he came from Newcastle.
Andy Cole.
I mean, they've done it forever, and but they it makes them better. But also, Ferguson particularly brought in the right characters, which is why he could play the way he did. As soon as you bring in players who aren't like the old boot room style players, it changes a lot of what it is. So now what you've got is lots of players who are there, and none of them are like Manchester United. So when you are on the pitch, like whose responsibility is it to tell the others what to do? Who's really setting the standards? Who really embodies what that is supposed to be? None of them really.
Bruno Fernandes now.
It's just Bruno Fernandes. But then, is he exactly what that is? Because you've got the old style captains like Roy Keane calling them out constantly.
Yeah.
That wouldn't maybe be the same thing there.
I think he is. I think to be fair to Bruno Fernandes, I think he is. It's sad to watch him because he just looks like he's alone in spirit. He's the only one that would be anywhere near slotting into any of those previous teams. In terms of his mentality, he whines a bit in a way that annoys people
Yes.
and doesn't feel necessarily like those old school Manchester United teams. But then that's probably the case at most teams in terms of how the culture has evolved. But
he wants to
in
win.
terms
The
of
reason he does that is 'cause he wants to
mentality,
win. Yeah.
he's like he'll do anything to win.
Yeah.
He is a winner on a losing team, right? And I feel like mentality-wise, he fits.
That's exactly it. And then you have other players that might play. I mean, in defence, I can't remember what game it was. I saw the other day, where the ball's just bouncing around the box and it feels like no one's taking charge of it. And I think what you need to have there is like an established room that is taking charge. Like in Liverpool now, like they went through this as well, but now like they brought in players who took charge of things. So then they have like Van Dijk takes charge of things, Alisson takes charge of things. The midfield is like everyone is like undeniably responsible for what they're doing and would maintain that. So anyone comes into that dressing room now, that squad, they are going to have to be to that level, otherwise they don't belong.
Yeah.
Whereas at United, I think it's very much like people have gone in and then they're like, oh, I'm at Man United now. This is pretty cool. It's not the same as you have to be the best to
What
get
about
in the
that
team.
lunch?
What about that lunch? What would they have for lunch?
I should say, because earlier I said that the staff aren't allowed lunches anymore. I think it's more complicated than that. I think if you're at Carrington or if you're with the team, you eat lunch for free, because that would be too awkward to say, refuse you, poorer person. No.
They've downgraded the quality of the luxury of the food.
And you don't get it at the stadium, I think.
Bruno Fernandes does make me wonder, though, because you know how he seems to be the only one really functioning at a high level in this dysfunctional environment.
Yes.
And the environment, as JJ has explained, seems to kind of drag a lot of players down to a level that we thought, everybody thinks, oh yeah, they'll be good, and then they go there and get worse. How good would Bruno Fernandes be in a functional team, and would he still do all of those, what some may call Stevie Me characteristics? You know how Gerrard used to try and win games by himself for Liverpool, and he'd end up in way out of position because he wanted to get the ball and dribble around everybody.
Do you remember, just to go on a quick tangent, do you remember that game? It was late in Gerrard's career. It was against Manchester United, and I think they were like 1-0 down.
When he came on at half-time.
Comes on at half-time. And he before the game's even started, he's like getting the crowd going. I feel sorry for him because that's what he's been told to do, is come on and like inject some love and some desire. And he goes in 2-footed on Ander Herrera within 14 seconds and gets sent off.
That was the 14-15 season when Gerrard was properly washed, like couldn't move anymore.
Oh, I love
Juan
that.
Mata scored a scissor kick in that game.
Wow, yes, he did. Yeah, I don't know, John. What do you think to Ruben's question? I mean, would Bruno Fernandes be effective in a winning team? Is that what you said?
Kind of like in a more functional environment. Would he be this same player that needs to try and do everything by himself, or like how good could he be? Like, what's his ceiling? Are United limiting him? Is this the bad version?
Could
of Bruno?
Guardiola break him like he's going to break Marmoush?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like I think with Bruno Fernandes, you've got a player who thrives in chaos, right? I think Conor O'Neill in the data department here did a piece on first time passes, and Bruno Fernandes just stands out as far and away above everyone else in terms of making those first time passes, which can be hugely creatively generative, right, of chances.
I love a first-time pass, John.
Yeah, exactly. I can confirm that. But at the same time, right, a lot of coaches at the elite teams now tend to want to reduce chaos and want to try and control games. So the big question, I guess, with Fernandes is what would happen if he went to one of those teams where it's less about generate, and for a team like Manchester United, the ability to be generative through those first-time passes is really important.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe the thing is that, like, would Manchester United win as much if they didn't have Bruno Fernandes? Almost certainly not.
Uh-huh.
But could you conceive of a Manchester United team where they had someone other than Bruno Fernandes maybe being a more well-rounded team? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what it comes down to, right? It's the environment that you're in is always the phrase that I use, which is maybe a little bit too like nerdy, but like the concept of talent being an emergent property, right? Which means that
it is too nerdy.
Yeah, it's quite nerdy. But what that means is that a player doesn't just have talent and it's like intrinsically there and it'll always come out on the pitch. It's like your environment allows your talent to come through in certain ways. So some environments are better than others. And I think that's kind of an interesting idea to apply to a lot of these players in the Rejects 11, right? Because I think, interestingly enough, even though these players are playing well now, their respective clubs.
Who are they? Will you just quickly?
Yeah, so we've got David De Gea in goal, and then a back line of Alvaro Carreras, Axel Tuanzebe, Eric Bailly, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and then Angel Gomes in the pivot, Andreas Pereira and Scott McTominay ahead of him, Anthony Elanga on the wings, and then Marcus Rashford up front.
Right.
I think you can argue that these guys are all playing well now. I think there's a number of reasons why you might argue that that's the case. But I also don't think that any Man United fan wouldn't be saying, well, we should sign these players now, right?
No.
I don't think you can say something like, oh, we would be a better team with Scott McTominay right now. But I don't think in the summer there'll be anyone being like, we need to buy Scott McTominay. He's the missing piece.
Yeah.
And I think
JJ might.
JJ, yeah, but I think that's kind of interesting, right? Because essentially what's happened is Man United have bought these players.
Yeah.
They've essentially devalued them. And I was just looking through Transfermarkt there. The last time that Manchester United made a profit in the transfer window was in 2003-04.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, what they're doing is they're spending a lot of money on players, and then they're making those players worth less than they were when they bought them, and then selling them off cheap, right? So what that means generally is that these players are going to a very different kind of club to the club that they were bought into when they went to Manchester United. So
there was a great Financial Times infographic thing the other day that it was looking at transfer spend and value of players, and it was really interesting because you saw teams. This is the kind of the argument was that this is the agent's view of a club, right? If you've got a player and you want to send them to a Premier League club, here's the one you should send them to. Here's a team, I think it might have been Brighton or something, where the value of your player increases by X amount on average when you go to Brighton. At Man United, it was like if your player joins Man United, they will be worth half as much in a year's time. It was something like that. I'm misquoting it, obviously. But when you see the data that starkly, it's terrifying. And also, if you were a Manchester United fan and you saw that, you would worry that at some point, as the human industry catches up, agents will start to think, actually, it's maybe quite a bad idea to send our player there.
I think that happened already.
Maybe it's already happened.
Yeah, I really think that's the case.
That's why they have to overpay for everyone.
I just want to double back up John and his Bruno Fernandes take, because I completely agree with what you said about him. And I think it's really weird, but sometimes like the best players do not make the team better. And I think with Fernandes, when he's the star, he is at his best, and that's when you see him, you're like, wow, this guy's great. But what you want is a whole team that's really good, with individuals able to then do little bits now and again. But what you see when he plays for like Portugal, this is not as good, and he's surrounded by really good players. And I think like his best season, definitely was when he was playing under Solskjaer, where he was in the middle, pinging balls and people running in behind, which is not how other managers want to play. It worked then, but it's not going to be a long-term thing. And so what you have, if you have loads of players like him, to get the most out of him, you need to play in a certain way. But that's not the way people want to play. And so do you really get the most out of him by playing the way you want to? And I don't think he can really adapt to doing other things, because he's better at doing the things he's doing now. Like, he's dropping deeper to central midfield role now, where he can do the things he wants to do. And late in the game, he starts playing like Pirlo. He starts like walking around, because they're normally chasing the game. So he can do that. And he looks like he's in charge of things, and that's all well and good. And he scores a free kick or whatever. So he's obviously got the star power. But there's something there.
But then that also means that with their current injuries and players that have been sent to other clubs, they have to play Eriksen in like a wide forward position, which doesn't help because he doesn't have the athleticism for that anymore.
That was bad, wasn't it?
Very
hey, do you know
quickly,
what
I
else
can
is
see him
bad?
doing that
Yeah,
very quickly.
You have no excuse, because like you can see Steve Hanke giving us the wind up. These two, they can't see it in the back of their head.
I know, but
He's
I've
been doing
wanting
that
to
at me for 10
throw
minutes.
one quiz question, because you mentioned the 03-04 summer, when the last time they made a transfer profit. Who did they buy and who did they sell? Very
in
quickly. Any
03-04?
names? Yeah.
Was it Jaap Stam?
No, that was before.
Oh.
They sold David Beckham.
Wait. Don't tell us. I know Steve wants us to speed up.
I saw this when I was checking. So it's a very funny transfer window.
They sold
Ruud van
David
Nistelrooy.
Beckham and Juan Sebastian Veron.
Oh, God.
Veron went to Chelsea. That was their Abramovich splurge. And they signed Eric Djemba, Tim Howard, David Bellion, Kleberson, and Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, there you go. It makes up for it.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Well, that isn't bad. But do you know what is bad?
Points.
They are bad, John. You're
Points
absolutely
are
correct.
bad, Joe.
Now, I wasn't here last week, but Ruben, I have to say, you did me a true solid. Thank you. You enabled me to not lose last week. So well done, because JJ, you lost. You added 8 points overall. What were the teams? Oh, the games were Aberdeen and Queen's Park.
Didn't
Manchester
JJ
United
get
and
all of his
Arsenal.
points in one fixture?
It seems as though JJ suggested Arsenal were going to win 5-0 and that Aberdeen were going to win
I don't mind it.
2-0. No, I mean, that seems fair. JJ, you added 8 points. Ruben, as me, you added 5, but that's fine, not to worry, because John added 4. So there's only one difference there. And Seb, who I think must have called in last week, because I don't think anyone else could have done this.
Yeah.
Only added 2. So congratulations, Seb, wherever you are.
That's good for Seb.
I didn't
Yeah,
listen to the
good.
show, but I imagine
It was
he called
definitely
in.
Seb. Yeah, he rang in. I remember.
You remember, did you?
Yeah, we had him on the screen.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice. I wish I was here to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I've got to look at is the stupid face of Steve Hankey.
The magnanimous face
The magnanimous
of
face.
Steve Hankey.
Why magnanimous?
Because I know what you're doing.
What am I
I'm
doing?
not going to stand for it. The words light and gas come to mind for some reason.
There's gas in here.
Oh my god! And there's a light.
And there's a light. Those are the 2 things you don't want
You
together.
said points are bad. I'll tell you what's worse.
A
Gas explosion that kills us all.
There was almost an electrical fire as well earlier.
Oh.
I mean, there wasn't really for anyone listening, but we had some fun with electric, and then we sang a song about an electrical fire. Anyway, the point is, JJ, you need to pick the fixtures for us, please,
All right.
for next week. And while you're doing that, I will tell everyone that the final overall, well, not the final, the overall scores as it stands. JJ's on 137. I mean, it's going to be so hard for you not to finish dead last at this point, because Seb is on 122. So there's now a 15-point gap between last place and third place. John, you're on 111. Oh, we're really starting to spread, aren't we? I think maybe these are the positions it's going to finish in, because me, old Papa Divine, I'm first with 104. Only just over the century mark. Incredible stuff, isn't it?
7
really?
points in it, though. You know, anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
JJ did put 8 points on this week.
That's true, but I
Could
haven't
happen.
done that for a long, long time.
Maybe
have I,
you
John?
should go for a big score.
I
you know?
don't think
Live a
so,
little.
John. No, I seem to remember last, what was it, the Euros that we did? When you got ahead, and then we'll just pick small scores, because that's how you play the game mathematically. And how does a taste of your own medicine feel inside of the mouth of Mackenzie? I bet a little bit bitter, John.
Yes.
Have you picked fixtures for us, JJ?
Yeah.
Oh, what have we got?
The League Cup final between Liverpool and Newcastle United.
Is that this weekend?
It is on Sunday.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's an amazing weekend of football, by
Is
the
it
way.
really?
Oh, the Super Sunday. You could conceivably either go to the pub or just sit at home and watch football from like 11 a.m. until
Right.
the
You know that
evening,
Mitchell and
nighttime.
Webb sketch.
Where it's football.
It's that.
Yeah. So what you're saying, JJ, is it's a great weekend for it to be my wife's birthday for me not to be able to watch any football.
That's a really good weekend for that. Yeah, you could
Great
treat
stuff.
her to 8 games of football in a row.
Yeah. We could have a mini divorce, a little mini separation.
Yeah.
For the weekend.
That's
and
good.
Then
You
get
should-
back together
Weirdly,
again.
when I was looking
should
through transfer
suppose
marks at the Manchester United transfer windows,
Mm.
going back in time, one of them just had Paul Scholes' career break.
Right.
That's all it
Yeah,
said.
yeah, because he retired and then came
He
back.
came back,
So
yeah.
you know, Ashley Young took his number 18, then he had number 22 when he came back. Because
Right.
Sir Alex was like, "Turns out we do need the central midfielder."
It's
And,
funny that it's
yeah.
put down as a career break now, when really it was he retired and then came back. Right?
That's right.
That's very different, I would say. than a
Gap
career.
year.
Second game?
I was going to do another Premier League one, but I'll just do the old firm. So Celtic versus Rangers on
Is it?
12:30. Yeah.
On Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Have they let away fans back in the stadiums for those?
I don't know.
Oh, you should.
Did you get those?
So we have Liverpool, Newcastle. Liverpool technically the home team.
Yep.
Celtic Rangers, assuming that's at Celtic Park, JJ.
Correct.
Great. Okay, so let's go around. JJ, you're
I
first.
get to go first.
Liverpool, Newcastle.
I think it'll be. So it's within 90 minutes, right? Or
It doesn't matter. It's if it goes to 120, then whatever your score
Right,
is
scoreline.
the same. Yeah.
nil.
So you can still predict a draw. It doesn't matter even if there
Yeah.
can't be one.
I just want to go for Newcastle 1-0.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. And what about Celtic Rangers?
3-2 to Celtic.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, it's me next, I believe. Are you taking a note of these, Steve Hankey?
Yes, so we have 1-0 to Newcastle in the League Cup final, according to JJ, and 3-2 to Celtic against Rangers in the Old Firm.
That's right. Okay, and now for me, I'm going to say I think Liverpool will beat Newcastle 2-0 in 90 minutes, probably. And I actually have no clue about the Old Firm, so I'm just going to say 1-1. Because that seems safe, doesn't it, John? Okay, who's next? John,
Me.
it's you next. What do you
I
think?
was going to say 2-0 Liverpool as well, so
I've said that
maybe
now.
I'll go 2-1.
2-1
instead.
Liverpool, Newcastle, and Celtic Rangers.
I think 3-0. I think
3-0 Celtic.
Rangers are all at sea at the moment, so
Really?
yeah.
Well, they're going to have to get back to land because there's a game happening
That's
soon.
right.
You know, and it's difficult to play football on the sea. I've tried. You try to get the ball under the water and it just pops back up again.
That's true.
You know?
And then you get to breathe the air
Yeah.
unless you form gills.
We played
Yeah.
a lot of water football when we were on holiday in Spain, though, didn't
That's true. Do you know what I like to do? I like when you push the ball down underneath your chest torso, and then you let it sort of roll all the way through your legs until it pops up like you've done a fart that was a football. That's one of my great pastimes. Yeah.
So, Ruben, you've got left.
Oh yeah, Ruben. What
Liverpool,
do you think?
Newcastle,
I'm
2-0
set
is
on
gone.
Liverpool, Newcastle.
I-
Steve Hankey's lost his
I'll
week,
go
hasn't he?
3-0 to Liverpool.
3-0 to Liverpool. Okay, and what do you think? What was the other one, Steve
Celtic,
Hankey?
Rangers.
Celtic versus Rangers.
Celtic versus Rangers. 1-1's gone, 3-2 to Celtic's gone, and 3-0 to Celtic.
What do you like to do
He's
in a
literally hosting the
What
show.
do you like to do in swimming pools, Steve?
Yeah, Steve.
Can I have 2-1 to Celtic, please?
You may.
All right. Great. Well, how exciting. Is that the end? Seems like it's the end, doesn't it? Is that the end, Steve?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's the end. See you later.